Hello, everyone, and welcome to Future Nonprofit, a podcast and YouTube channel where we talk with industry experts in the for-profit and nonprofit space about how to build and scale the nonprofit of tomorrow. I'm Ted Vaughn, and today, like we always do, we have a fantastic guest. But today's guest comes from the agency that I helped build and scale with Mark Miller, Historic. Our Chief Strategy Officer, James Bloedel, is joining us to talk through Historic's annual list of books that we recommend any leader, especially leaders in the nonprofit space, read. We're going to walk through all 10 books from number 10 to number 1. I think number 1 is a profound book. I'm really excited about it. It's probably my favorite read of the year. And we're going to interview James, and James will talk to us about his thoughts on these books, why it made his list. And this will accompany, of course, the blog that we'll put in the show notes where you can get these 10 books and links to them as well. So let's dive in. James, welcome to the show. It's awesome to have you. Tell our guests a little bit about you and the work that you do at Historic and your background in the nonprofit space.
Hey, Ted. Thanks for having me on. I've been behind the scenes at Historic and Future Nonprofit for a while now, helping the organizations that we serve to create content strategies, campaigns, experiences that entertain, educate, and empower their audiences, and ultimately move them just from being donors to fanatics, fans, and champions of the organization's cause.
James does great work. He's been privileged to poke around under the hood of some significant nonprofits, and it's made a huge difference to Historic and in many ways to Future Nonprofit. So stoked to have you on the show. Let's dive into book number 10, Daniel Pink's When, The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing. James, why did a Daniel Pink book make the list?
Well, timing is everything, Ted, which is that's the description of this book, but we all know this deep down intuitively. I left work the other day at a very specific time because I wanted to get our car washed, and I knew that the time I was leaving at, not based on, I didn't go on Google and look at times that the car wash was busy, although I probably should have, but I had this kind of gut cultural understanding of, based on the time of day, the day it was, the weather, I'll bet the line at the car wash right now is pretty low. And I got there, and that was true. We all inside of us, based on our experiences, our culture, we kind of have a handle on timing. When is the right timing? When is not the right timing? And that understanding works for things in your everyday life, but it also scales up to, nationwide, global realities around, well, when is the best time to launch this new campaign? When is the best time to announce this to my team? When is the best time of year in our organization to make this significant change? Those aren't just gut intuitive realities. There's also science, behavioral psychology behind those things. So the more robust understanding you have of those patterns, those frameworks, how we operate as people around timing, the more successful you're going to be in choosing timing and planning when to roll out significant changes in your organization. So it's a really good book. It's a nerdy book for sure, but there's some really interesting case studies in it, and 100% realities, like I said, frameworks that you can apply to your nonprofit when you choose to launch or start or even stop doing certain things.
That sounds fantastic. I've seen so many rebrands not fail, but walk with a limp because they got timing wrong. And thinking through the, not just the timing for you and your organization, but for your donors and for the audience that you serve. Syncing things up in a way that's coordinated. Such a smart idea. Let's move to book number 9, Dr. Vince Molinaro's Community of Leaders. At Historic, we're all about brand strategy from the inside out. At Future Nonprofit, we talk a lot about culture, spend a lot of time talking about leadership and the dynamics of community and culture within the brands that we're serving and talking with. James, why is Community of Leaders on the list, in your opinion?
This is a book that any leader, doesn't matter if you are nonprofit, for-profit, needs to read in 2025. In the kind of post-COVID era, we saw all of these organizations spin up innovation departments or innovation teams, or maybe there was someone in the organization who was the chief innovation officer. Innovation was a part of their job. And while that's all good and fine, as our good friend Mark Miller would say, innovation needs to not be a team, a department, a function. It needs to be something that is a core part of the culture of an organization. Otherwise, you're never going to innovate if innovation is relegated to a team, an individual. And the same is true of leadership. Leadership is not just something that is relegated to middle management, upper management, executive leadership. Leadership is a culture that exists inside of your organization. So if you truly want to create breakthrough products, experiences, campaigns, if you want your entire team from entry-level individuals up to your C-suite to really be pushing the organization forward, every single person needs to be thinking of themselves as a leader, as a stakeholder in the organization. So this book is a fantastic deep dive in how to create a culture where everyone thinks and views themselves as a leader and doesn't simply view as the person that they report to as a leader. It's a mindset and a cultural principle, not a reporting structure or hierarchy.
Love this book. This book completely aligned. In fact, it's rare that I read a book that I feel like gives me better language for what I have felt and taught and been about for over 2 decades. This book did that. So if you're a fan of any of the things we talk about at Future Nonprofit or Historic around culture, around leadership, around the intersection of leaders shaping culture, that culture is the soil that everything grows out of, this is a book for you. And it's not a hard book. It's not academic. It's very accessible, very practical. Book number 8, Jobs to be Done by Anthony W. Ulwick. Theory to Practice. James, why is book number 8 Jobs to be Done?
This book has been kind of standard reading in a lot of MBA programs for a long time for a reason. It kind of operates around this theory that individuals every day wake up with a list of jobs that need to be done. I need to get the kids to school. I need to have, this conversation with my spouse or partner. I need to be able to have this thing done by the end of the week. And we choose brands, products, experiences, not because, we love that product or brand. It's probably part of it. We choose it because we have a job to get done in our life. And that's the tool that we're going to use to accomplish that. So thinking in the context, especially of a nonprofit, think about that general donor, that kind of mid-tier giving donor, that major donor. What are the jobs to be done in their life that they could use your organization as a tool to fulfill? So do they want to teach generosity to the next generation? Have they reached a point in their career where they're getting ready to retire and they're looking for a way to give back, to kind of have that psychological or that psychic income going? Can your organization be the answer to that? So looking at your audience through the lens of the everyday tasks they need to get done, how does your organization plug in to help them accomplish that? And I guarantee if you look through that lens, you will see a higher level of engagement with your audience.
Moving on to book number 7 by April Dunford. The book, obviously awesome, how to nail product positioning so customers get it, buy it, and love it. We have the privilege on Future Nonprofit of talking to a lot of direct-to-consumer brands and leaders in the for-profit space. And it's amazing how product positioning and understanding and marketing has so much to teach the nonprofit space. James, what did this book teach you that you find to be relevant and helpful in the nonprofit space?
So as humans, we're really good at putting things into categories, whether it's food, cars, clothing, and every brand or product everywhere is trying to differentiate. This is why we're different. This is why we're better. This is why you shouldn't think of us the same way as you think of the other brands or products in this space. And nonprofits need to do this as well. I mean, how many nonprofits could you and I name right now, Ted, that try to get clean water to people or do humanitarian aid? What makes organization A different from organization B? This book is all about creating that differentiation so that your organization not only stands out from other organizations like it, but has your audience and new audiences you're hoping to discover you thinking about you in a completely new category that they don't think about anyone else in. This is a great book on how to do that. It's really, really practical as well. It's not just theory and philosophy. There's kind of step-by-step frameworks for creating that new category. Every nonprofit leader should read this book in 2025, especially nonprofit leaders who are maybe at legacy organizations who have been thought of maybe in certain categories for a long time. If you're looking to evolve, this is a great book to read this year.
All right. Book number 6 is a book that so many of my peer group have read. I'm a parent. I am friends with lots of people who are parents. James, you will be a parent very soon. And this is a book that has been profound and has been rippling through conversations and parties that I'm a part of. I can't wait to hear James explain why it's on our list, but by Jonathan Haidt, The Anxious Generation: How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. James, why is a book like this on our top 10 list?
You know, Ted, we talk with a lot of organizations that are in the midst of navigating their donor file aging. I mean, I can't tell you how many organizations I talk to on a weekly basis that their average donor age is somewhere between 68, 74. And this book is really a primer on the mental and psychological state of the upcoming generation. Eventually, your donor file is going to turn over. Generations pass on, the next generation ages in. And honestly, Ted, there's a lot in this book that even just anecdotally you could look at and go, oh, based on my experience in broader society, I could have probably told you a few of these things are probably true. But man, the research and the history in this book and how it's unpacked just builds such a compelling case for, you know, the technological age that Gen Z, some of the younger millennials, Gen Alpha have been thrust into, how it's changing parenting, how it's changing how we grew up, kind of the cascading effects that it has on our mental state, how we make decisions, how we view ourselves. All of these things are going to be incredibly relevant to how you communicate with the next generation, especially topics around generosity, making an impact in the world. So, like I said at the top, a primer on the mental state of the next generation and how your nonprofit needs to be prepared to receive this next generation as they become the front lines of your donor file.
It's such a great example of the work Historic does, thinking outside of the existing nonprofit space and ahead of the existing curve that most nonprofit leaders are thinking in. What a great example of a book to read to stay aware of the quickly shifting tides of the audience that we serve, especially the audience on mission with us, those supporting and engaging and partnering. I love that that's on our list. Let's move to book number 5. A personal favorite. Love Kim Scott and the book Radical Candor. I love the subtitle as well. Be a kick-ass boss without losing your humanity. What a great title. This has been a book that has furthered my own communication and many people I know and the coaching work that I do, what it means to build empathy and familiarity and relational trust. At the same time, you're building clarity and functional trust. James, this book, I assume, is on the list for those reasons, but what for you was the most helpful aspect of this book that put it on your list?
Oh, you're spot on, Ted. And I want to turn this one around and ask you, because I came out of a few organizations before I got to Historic where radical candor or the principles in radical candor just weren't there. And then I met you, started working underneath you and your business partner, Mark, and your radical candor was almost a bit shocking to me at first, but quickly I learned the the power of having it. And now, I mean, radical candor exists to a point in our team and between you and I where, we'll just call each other and be like, I didn't like the way that you said this or did that, and we need to talk about it. And we figure it out, but it's because we have that level of understanding about radical candor with each other. So talk to me, Ted, about radical candor, the power of it, how it builds that relational and functional trust in an organization.
I think there is this misbelief that candid, cut to the quick, direct feedback is lacking empathy and ultimately harsh. And I think what this book does so well is it provides training for how to have high empathy and how to build relational trust and currency through being direct and efficient. And too often in the nonprofit space, one of the challenges I find is an abundance of relational trust, which means goodwill, and we're shoulder to shoulder. We believe in the integrity and the character and the heart and the motivation of the person we're working with. But we believe in that so much, we can't actually speak truthfully or honestly about gaps in their performance or gaps that erode our trust in their competency or their capacity to lead. And this whole concept of relational and functional trust really has been built out of Kim Scott's understanding of radical candor, how to be empathetic and direct. And things move too quickly. There's not enough time in the day. We have to learn how to be candid, direct, give honest feedback, but in a way that doesn't erode or destroy trust and goodwill. This book to me is a cornerstone on how to do that. Book number 4 is probably our geekiest and most academic looking book. And yet, like most O'Reilly books, it's chock full of practical, helpful, meaningful wisdom. Book number 4 is Designing for Behavior Change, Applying Psychology and Behavioral Economics. James, let's just start there. What are we applying psychology and behavioral economics to? I would assume behavioral change, but
this is a fantastic read for any organization that wants to transform their donor experience in 2025. So, like you said, Ted, O'Reilly books are typically pretty dense. They're thick. They read a little bit like textbooks, but this is a fantastic book that dives into behavioral psychology, product design. The products and services these days, usually SaaS tools, applications, social media platforms, they're all designed to change the way that we behave and reward us for behaving in the ways that those tools or products want us to behave. So how can you take those principles that typically go into some of the, highest engaging platforms or tools on the market and apply them to your donor experience? How can you create experiences for your nonprofit that donors go through and it excites them, it engages them? There's a product design philosophy called surprise and delight, that anytime you go and engage with a product, it should surprise or delight you. How can you build things like that into the experience a donor has with your organization? And there's really, really complex ways you can do that with personality and all this kind of technology. And there's really, really small ways you can do this just on a day-to-day basis, that if you go through this book, it'll start to change the way you're thinking about these things, how you can apply them to how your organization views your donors and their experience.
It's truly amazing, too, how often we work with brands that get everything right except that digital journey. The process the donor goes through, it's the most compelling words. Imagery could be amazing. The whole idea and how they present the idea seems compelling, except for all of these issues with the user journey and the amount of times they have to click and the lack of optimization on the donor page, and all these things psychologically end up eroding trust and eroding confidence in the brand, right? So the subtle psychology and behavioral economics is so smart for us to be studying and be students of in 2025 and beyond. Let's move to number 3. One of our kind of gurus, one of the gurus of brand and brand strategy that Mark, you and I, and multiple others I'm sure listening have been following for years. Marty Neumeier wrote a book, Zag. Zag is not a new book, but it is an essential book, and it's on our list for that reason. James, why is Zag and Marty Neumeier on your list in 2025?
It's ironic to quote Rory Sutherland when talking about a Marty Neumeier book, but Rory Sutherland has this great quote in Alchemy, where he says that if we all behaved in logical ways, we would all end up in the same place. And the reality is that to solve some of the biggest problems that we need to today, we can't all end up in the same place. So Zag is a great book that in the title you can probably guess is about zagging when everybody else is zigging. So what are the frameworks? How can your organization or you personally in your leadership determine, hey, when everyone is going this way, where are the places where I need to go the opposite direction to see breakthrough, to see change, to see innovation? Sometimes the logical choice or the choice informed by data isn't always necessarily the right choice. Human beings in particular are complex, and oftentimes the things we say, the things that we think are not actually always the things that we end up doing. Zag is a great book on the other option and how to differentiate yourself.
It's also a fantastic principle that applies not only to how you might externally think through your positioning and your messaging and your category and communication as a brand, but just internally to put your key leaders through a process through the discipline of thinking in new ways, of applying new ideas, of getting out of existing categories or ruts. It can lead to breakthrough, even if it doesn't necessarily require radical reshifting or zagging. Just the internal process of doing some zag can lead to helpful outcomes for your nonprofit. Book number 2 is Very Good Copy, 207 Micro Lessons on Thinking and Writing Like a Copywriter. I find that a common pain point across all clients we serve is copywriting. It shows up all the time, whether it's an email or it's ad copy or it's homepage copy. Abraham Heschel said words create worlds, and getting those words right, whether short form or long form, has never been more important. James, why did this book make your list in the second position?
Everyone I know, I think, is sick of hearing me talk about this book because I have not shut up about it since it came out in 2024. No, what you just said, Ted, about words creating worlds, I mean, is a fantastic intro to this book. So many of the organizations we work with are doing such incredible, vast, complicated work, but struggle to communicate it in succinct, compelling, engaging ways that pull on emotional triggers of an audience and get them to move and take some kind of action. Very Good Copy is honestly, it's a masterclass in word crafting, in creating messaging, short language that drives people to understand big ideas and to take action in light of them. You know, for anyone listening who doesn't know, there's a difference between copywriting and content writing. Content writing is meant to inform, to educate, to compel. Copywriting is about getting an individual to read a short line or letter and take action out of it, be compelled to think or do or say something differently. And this is relevant in the world of advertising and marketing in general, but especially for nonprofits that need to move an individual to take a step deeper into a cause, deeper into a problem, something maybe they're not familiar with before. And it's especially relevant to, I know we're all thinking it, it's especially relevant to fundraising. How do you write compelling copy that converts, that gets individuals to take a next step and make a donation, sign up for a newsletter, engage with your organization? This book is equal parts philosophy, kind of theory around copywriting, and equal parts really relevant step-by-step instructions on writing a copy that converts. Can't recommend this book enough. Pick up a copy for your marketing and development team. Read it yourself. Your communication just internally to your team will improve if you write it.
I love your passion for good copy, and I have nothing to add but support, unanimous support for James Bloedel's passion for good copy. And finally, book number 1, Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. I love this book. I love Will. I love the restaurant that he was a part of. I've had the privilege of touring the kitchen. This was probably the most significant read of my 2024. James, why is it on your list for 2025? You're not a restaurant guy. What is Unreasonable Hospitality doing on our list?
You know, it's probably a little bit of an overstatement to say that this book changed my life last year, but man, it has had a tremendous impact on how I view hospitality, generosity, creating experiences. Yes, this book is seen through the lens of Will's time working in some of the top restaurants in New York City, how they approach hospitality in the food and beverage industry. But Will starts to take it and translate it into, if you are a public school teacher, if you are a plumber, if you are a real estate agent, how do you bake unreasonable hospitality into the work that you do so that you can take ordinary interactions, ordinary moments, and turn them into unforgettable moments where people feel seen, cared for, understood. I mean, I can't think of any development director or a nonprofit that wouldn't want their donor base to feel that way, to feel seen, understood, cared for by the organization that they're choosing to partner with. This book is, again, equal parts philosophy. How do we think about hospitality? How do we think about going above and beyond and serving people? Paired with really practical tips for how to think about these things in everyday life.
And if you're a food and beverage restaurant geek like I am, it's so cool to kind of hear about the stories about the inner workings of the restaurant business, especially in New York, which is such a fabled land of restaurants and amazing chefs. And Will's been in a lot of the great places. So love this book, just like James. So there you have it. Historic's top 10 recommended readings for nonprofit leaders in 2025. Check out the blog, link to all the books, listen to many of them on Audible. Some of these are fantastic on Audible. In fact, Unreasonable Hospitality, I would argue, is even better on Audible because it's read by Will. So check out the books. Thank you for joining us. As always, share this with your friends wherever you find podcasts, right here on YouTube. We're thankful for our listening audience and look forward to seeing you on future shows. Take care and goodbye.